Best person. She's the best baby. I don't know what I did, but I'm glad I did. The bad one?
No, she'll give you a few.
Oh, yeah, you'll get it, but what do we do? Just push that arrow.
Ashley is perfect.
I can't see how fast it's going.
It'll take like a step, but that's about it.
Yeah.
The whole shoot. Don't you wonder how they can go on those floors?
I know.
I did till they fall and I was like,
Yeah.
She looks like she's okay.
yeah, she's going great. Is it? I got a minute. My watch is broke. Just been wearing
I
that
got
just for style.
5:32, so. Show on the road.
Hey, y'all.
Supper cooked. It's sweet.
We scare everybody off the last test. The advocates here though, it touches the masses. Tammy's here. We'll wait for Melissa and then we'll get started. Everybody get a chance to look over the budget, proposed budget?
Kids are wearing their supposed to be.
Budgets. Yeah, we might have to go grab her if we don't. We want to start prompt. Is Melissa meetings are important meetings?
It's definitely our.
I got me one at work, I just don't write it for the board meeting. I know I do get some. Sorry for the delay, y'all. Oh, okay. Yeah, we don't have, do we need an attorney present to do the oath?
We've got an over. Excuse me. Is that one that is here? Okay.
Well, after the swearing of a new board member, or she did actually before, what, swearing of the board member. All right, thank you all for coming tonight. We appreciate it here, our monthly organization. We need to start a little potluck dinner for all of us people here, so we can maybe break bread together. But I do want to call to order the April 15th Mountshire and Montgomery County Library Board of Trustees meeting. That being said, our first call to order is the swearing in of our new board member, David Roberts. Simplify that.
Yeah. I do solemnly swear or affirm,
I do solemnly swear or affirm,
as the case may be,
as the case may be,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and be faithful and true to the Commonwealth of Kentucky,
and be faithful and true to the Commonwealth of Kentucky,
so long as I continue a citizen thereof,
so long as I continue a citizen thereof,
and that I will faithfully execute,
and that I will faithfully execute,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
the office of trustee of the Montgomery County Public Library,
the office of trustee of Montgomery County Public Library,
according to law,
according to law,
and I do further solemnly swear or affirm
and I do further solemnly swear or affirm
that this adoption of the present Constitution,
that this adoption of the present Constitution,
I being a citizen of this state,
I being a citizen of this state,
have not fought a duel with deadly weapons within this state nor out of it,
have not fought a duel with deadly weapons in this state or out of it,
nor have I sent or accepted a challenge to fight a duel with deadly weapons,
nor have I sent or accepted a challenge to fight a duel with deadly weapons,
nor have I acted as second in carrying a challenge,
nor have I acted as second in incurring a challenge,
nor aided or assisted any person thus offending,
or aided or assisted any person thus offending,
so help me God.
so help me God.
We got off easy. We didn't have anything to read when we
Maybe reading it would be easier.
I feel safer.
How does that work?
I think they added that after this time.
All right, before we get to the introduction of our, and the hearing of our guests, we actually are, I need a motion for the board to go into closed session according to KRS 61.810, 1, and we're looking at B and C, the possible litigation and the property question.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Actually, we're gonna remove ourselves this time.
Actually, we can only do one at a time.
Oh, so C's actually.
So we have to do the litigation first,
Mhm.
and then we'll come back and then do the other if we need to.
Okay, we'll see. I need to read it.
You're more obvious than we are this time.
I'm trying to be good stewards, you know?
Also, what are you all doing back here?
So you got.
We didn't figure that out.
Motion and a second.
Yeah.
Okay, I was still trying to catch that.
I thought it was maybe stuck in a tree somewhere. I don't have my phone with me. I don't get news made messages when I don't carry my phone.
Okay.
No.
See, now you can show videos on the screen, whatever you want to do on the phone.
We'll make it work.
Be all entertained. Oh, there's yours.
All the terrorist groups are just.
Okay, all right. All of them.
They're treating it as a, no, anti-terrorist.
I want to know.
Usually it's outside, it's not inside.
The other special taxing district organizations must also be committed. They're taking measures, yeah.
That probably makes the state.
No compromise, so. Just make some
Good,
recommendations
of
to
course.
them. That's pretty much what we can do at this point. It'll require litigation.
That's true.
Being rated differently. Various infrastructure and speed response was kind of a preemptive. That would
Lost a few there.
send the expense for people saving some money pretty soon on their home insurance because
We're trying to change the
rating
rating.
advertising improved, never been improved. It would be a.
Sorry about the little break there, but we had to get our ducks in
Genealogists
line.
out there, you know, they stop in and ask questions anyway.
Yeah. I need a motion to go back into open session.
Second.
Those in favor? All opposed? I guess that's unanimous. All right. All right, before we get an introduction to hearing with guests, we do want to just discuss what we kind of have a written response to some of the things you all want us to. The only difficulty is that I only received it today, your letter. So what we have is probably not everything 100% what you want, but it is some answers to some things. We appreciate your questions, we really do, so we can give a good, honest answer, and that's what we're trying to do. So I do want to.
And we tried to expedite. I mean,
Yeah, we said it on Friday.
we
I think
did.
it was
We
Melissa's.
did. We did anywho. We did hoodie who. We did everything we could because we knew there was a timeout
Yeah.
because of what had gone on.
Well, okay, and one thing I do want to make about the letter that I did say, and one thing before I read kind of what our thinking is that one error on your all's letter is that there wasn't precedent set in the circuit court. Precedent can only be set in the appellate court. So there was a ruling in the circuit court, but it's not precedent. So that's just one thing I want to address before we go. It's just I went to law school for a little bit. Bert can probably back me up on that. That being said, the Montgomery County Public Library, like other public libraries across the state with taxing authority, we believe acted in good faith when we followed the guidance set forth by the KDLA in establishing tax rates annually. The Montgomery County Library acknowledges that there have been 2 lawsuits in Northern Kentucky. Members of our library board would like to see all parties involved, not pursue further litigation until there has been a precedent set. There's no need for this, we believe, for the cost of the Montgomery County citizens, additional funds and legal fees, county employee work time spent, and the increased cost of legal insurance coverage for many years to come. In fact, we've already incurred a certain amount of expense in doing this without litigation. So, that being said, the Montgomery County Library Board is committed to the citizens of this county. We really believe that we are. That's why we're doing what we're doing. That's why I got on this board. I'd encourage all y'all to get involved and volunteer in something like this because it's that important to our community. So we're committed first, obviously, to providing for the reading and literacy and informational needs of the community. Literacy is why I got on this board. That's I feel is the most important thing that we do as a library. And it continues to be the primary focus of this library. Secondly, the library board is committed to the well-being of the citizens of this community as a whole. One way of demonstrating our position at this time is for the increased need for service, but question in regard to the taxes and laws in place to pay for that service. We understand that there is some questions. But we believe by setting a fiscally responsible budget that demonstrates the ability to maintain the current status of the library, our objectives and programs, while also making a stated commitment to continue to be accountable to our taxpayers. In our upcoming proposed budget, which we're going to review tonight, it reflects this. There is compromise in it. In fact, we are willing, and our proposed budget reflects this, drop the personal property rate to a rate that equals the real property rate. Both, I believe, at 6% is what we're looking at. Retain the real property rate at the rate that was in place for fiscal year 12-13, so last year's rate. Like I said, I'd like to restate it. This would mean 6% per $100 for both real property and personal property. And our vehicles will remain at the original rate of 3 cents per $100. I think where the library has always had it. So that is our statement. Like we said, until we are unwilling to even acknowledge that there may have been even in good faith a mistake when there's no precedent set, we're still firm by the stance that we were doing what we thought was right. I think that is the only stance as a group of people who are volunteering and doing what's right can take. So that being said, we are now open for our guests to speak.
Doug Gesford?
Actually, Doug, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I got too ahead of myself there. For those that weren't in attendance last time, we are going to go by the same guidelines from the last meeting. Anyone wishing to speak should identify themselves. Comments made by the public speakers must address the library board. Time limits are, we're going to set them at 3 minutes again, as we feel if you're prepared, that's adequate time. And you're not able to donate your time allotted. Each speaker will have one opportunity. If you cannot fulfill the 3 minute, the space, we will give you a 30-second warning and allow you to finish up your comments. That's pretty much it, other than if you kind of go outside those bounds, you know, I'll kind of say.
Could you, before I start, because not everybody is privileged to that letter, I think in fairness to everybody, could you read the request that was made of you? Is that possible?
No, I don't know why we have to
Okay.
do that. I think it'll be in the probably paper next week for everyone to see. All right, yes, sir.
Douglas Gesford. First off, we wanted to make it abundantly clear, and we tried to use all the proper wordsmithing stuff so that that letter does not indicate in any way or fashion that something illegal, divisive, contrary, deliberate was done by any of the board members. We don't believe that. We believe that really the incorrect thing was done by the Department of Library and Archives, the people that gave you the information, as is the local government people. The only thing that, and we don't, again, we've said it before, we don't want to abolish the library, disintegrate the library, make everybody in Montgomery County illiterate. We don't want any of that. The only thing we are now requesting of you is, now that there has been 2 summary judgments, and you being a lawyer know that summary
I'm
judgments.
not a lawyer.
Well, you taking some law schools, you know that summary judgments are pretty forceful, because a summary judgment is basically where there is no conflict between the 2 parties as to what the facts are. So it's not like a decision was made, it's like the facts are laid out before them and they decide what to do. And the 2 summary judgments in 2 different counties were almost identical in their decision to say that petition form libraries need to petition for increases or decreases in their tax rate. And given that scenario, we ask that you drop your rate back to the petition rate of 3 pennies per $100. And we also suggested that, unlike the 2 lawsuits that are going on in Northern Kentucky, where the citizens are asking for all the money that was collected improperly before, we're not asking for that. In fact, what we suggested is you take that money that you have set aside and use it to help bridge your budget, because we know that that change is an abrupt change and you need time to fold it in. So what we suggested was 2 things: was to take that money that's set aside right now and use it to help bridge yourself to a new number, and at the same time, the one question that I didn't hear answered one way or another was to put a hold on the purchase of the new building. And the reason for that is obvious, that there's a great deal of expectation that the law and the challenges to that law will be thwarted, such that come sometime in the near future, the 3 penny per $100 will be the requirement of all board members that are formed by petitions. So what we didn't want to do is, we didn't want to find ourselves upside down as a citizen.
That's all right, just wrap it up.
So
You get a chance.
we didn't want to wind up being upside down from a citizenry standpoint as far as obligations.
Mhm.
And we wanted to make it so that that transition, albeit painful, is somewhat more amicable, in the hopes of being cooperative in nature.
Appreciate that. And I guess what I kind of referenced it a little bit when I was talking, but I didn't receive this letter and open it today, and I didn't see the email from you until today. I have been out of the office, and so I have not, and so that's another reason why we didn't get a chance to address everything in
Well,
that letter.
I mean, I didn't see this till I got here tonight,
Yeah,
because
right.
he did not have the time.
And that's
He
what we
presented
didn't
this to
want to,
us
and that's what we
now,
didn't want to
so-
happen.
Mhm.
And we sent it last week actually to Melissa, so I mean, we asked that copy be distributed to all board members.
So we understand that things
You
happen.
sent it to her what day? Thursday?
Thursday or Friday.
I wasn't in office,
Thursday.
well, we're not gonna get into that, but I wasn't in office till Wednesday without a computer, so I don't have email. Things happen.
That's right, Shannon has an Apple and it doesn't do read receipts, so there's no way to do it.
But thanks, Doug, I appreciate your comments. Yeah.
But I
State
think,
your name.
thank you, everybody, my name's right there. Must have changed from how we were, it'd be kind of fun. But I think, you know, we have, and I did, you know, read it and it just didn't get there in time. But, I think as we've looked at the budget, and, you know, I'm key in working toward the budget and they will be, you know, finalizing that tonight. We have looked at trying to, you know, if that does come up, I mean, obviously that's big on our agenda of trying to think about what happens in the future. You know, I said, you know, we've said we've acknowledged that. So as we budgeted, you know, we looked at those numbers and I think, you know, and you mentioned that coming to a happy medium and using our reserves. That 6%, you know, bringing that personal property rate down to that and then making sure that we keep the rate at where it's at now and, you know, saying that we're not gonna do any growth, which right now we can't change the rates at all. That doesn't happen until August, and we've talked about that too. But going on and budgeting to that effect, at least the board is, you know, showing that they're willing to work that way, we're working in that direction, and then, you know, when all this pans out, you know, we'll have at least made that much of a cut and be ready to look toward the future if something does happen. You know, and I hope you see that, you know, they're not just going on, you know, saying whatever, that you know, the board is willing to work to that point.
Yes, ma'am.
Timmy Park May, I've got a question of, and I've never heard what the purchase price for the, old Mary Child's Hospital, property would be. And I believe I've heard the figure 1.4 million in reserves that's been set aside, am I correct in that?
No, it's number.
Okay, well, whatever, but roughly, from what I understand, there's a little over $1 million in reserve. And I don't know how much of the potential property can be required for. But, and I understand the need for budgeting and all that, but at the same time, I am down at this library a lot and we desperately need a new facility and we desperately need a place with more parking. So on behalf of all of us who really utilize the library, if there is a way, and I trust the judgment of the board, because you are all business people and community volunteers, and you know how important having accessible library with all the proper technical support and everything that's required. You know how desperately we need it, and I just want to say as a member of the public that I'm in favor of us doing it, and if the taxes, I understand you're trying to work with this group, which I appreciate, but at the same time, I just want to say there are those of us who support whatever rate you all come up with in order to ensure that our library facilities remain the best they can be. Thank you.
Thanks.
Really Blevins, kind of, touching note on what she spoke with, I'm sure a lot of the public is, you know, fans of the library, utilize the library. I'm a big fan of the library, grew up in the library. But it's not necessarily what we want, to spend other people's tax money on. It's what we can legally spend other people's tax money on. And I think the law was kind of set, that it needs to be, any changes in tax rate needs to be by petition. If the library was formed by petition, because these special taxing districts, really, there is no, where they don't have to go and get approval for anything, any tax rate sets, it kind of takes away from any representation when things are being done. The board members, or, you know, the elected officials that select board members that aren't elected, they kind of want to wash their hands and say, well, we can't do anything about it, they can set their own rates. Well, that doesn't fly, because anything that's done where someone else is allowed to stick their hand in your pocket or your purse and get your money, there needs to be some sort of accountability for it. And so it's not necessarily what we want to be able to have. Yes, it's great, you know, to have a big, nice library where, you know, with all the most up-to-date services. You know, most of us want big, nice houses with the most up-to-date everything in it too, but, you know, it's what we can afford, and we're working for those. The library is mostly funded on taxpayers' money. Maybe the ones who want the biggest, nicest library in a new building maybe can get together and have fundraisers. I mean, I would be one to be right there at a fundraiser and donate the money, but someone being able to tell me, you have to give me money and you cannot question it, that I hope on.
Actually, we talked about doing a fundraising committee, so can we get in the minutes that she said she didn't want to do that? But to answer your question, there is a little bit of a misunderstanding about rates. People think we just pull them out of thin air. Melissa, will you explain a little bit about how we're giving 3 examples and we choose within that?
Well,
and our budget, how many people, governing bodies, actually look over it before we can do anything?
Up until this point, it has been the process that we've received 2 rates, the compensating rate and then 4% overcompensating, which would be for revenue that would be 4% more of what the compensating rate is. And that's been the way that our library and other libraries in the state have received their options for rates for 30 years. Since this library was established, that's been the procedure. Then the board looks at those rates. If they're going to be at that 4% overcompensating rate, it's advertised in the paper. There's a public meeting held. You know, people can come in and voice their comment, concern, issues, problems, you know, whatever with it. And then once those are set, we inform the county judge, it goes to the county clerk, it, you know, goes all those places that, you know, they are aware. You have an opportunity to talk about it. It's not that they just pull a number out of their hat and they can set it at any rate, wherever or whatever.
No, I understand how, you know, now that all this has come about, but I also know that now that there is a question or, you know, realization that the powers that be that are giving your options on rate are very likely in the wrong on how they've done it, then it needs to be addressed, and unless someone, you know, says, hey, let's address it, then it won't. And I think that's what a lot of people are trying to do now.
We appreciate your comment. I just want a clarification just in case you weren't aware of it. So.
No, I understand that now. Of course, before a lot of this has come about and in the paper, I wasn't aware of it. I didn't realize we even, you know, had any say.
Okay.
Does the board have to?
Restate your name, please.
Is this my allotted time?
Yes.
'Cause I was.
No, we'll start it. We'll start it once you say your name.
No. Okay, then I won't say no. John Doe.
Man, you got like 30 seconds.
I was just wondering, does the library board have to choose one of those rates that is suggested? That is that the only options, the rates that are suggested, or can you?
You can choose
another?
lower, I mean, if that's what you're asking, the 10-11 year, yeah, the 10-11, calendar year, fiscal year, tax year, however you wanna say that. The board actually could have went up to 13% on the personal property, and they elected to go down to 10%. So they asked for extra options to be calculated so that they could figure those in and look at them. They're presented with those two rates, but they have the option of asking for additional rates. So they did actually go down to that 10%, and that would be the same thing as right now we have budgeted to keep it at that 6% rate. We will be presented next year in August with a compensating and a 4% overcompensating, which is gonna be more than 6%.
But you have the
Yes.
final say on setting that rate,
Yes.
regardless of what they suggest. Okay.
As long as you don't exceed it.
Yes, as
Right.
long as it doesn't go
Right.
over that 4%.
Right.
I'm Bert May, and I didn't intend to talk, but you can actually exceed it if you want to. But you run the risk if you go over the 4% increase of having a referendum, having a recall. And also House Bill 1 that was passed this year, which is gonna give a lot of oversight to special districts. The fiscal court will have veto power over your rates when you set them. So it will have to go to fiscal court, and if they don't like it, they can veto it.
Bring it back to us.
And for the first time, because of that, we actually have to go present it to the court.
But it's always been presented to the court.
It's been presented either in writing or over the phone, or we have to actually, I don't know, that it hasn't been set out guidelines of how it's actually gonna work, but, that's the way it's looking, is we actually have to go to the fiscal court, to a meeting or whatever, and present it now.
Any other comments? Comments?
Oh, yeah, I'll go ahead and do it. Ken Siders. The recommending boards, the legal rates and so forth are numbers that someone would have to study or be acquainted with to judge. Just as a taxpayer whose property rate, property valuation has been the same since I moved here in 2008. But 2009 to 2012, the library portion of taxes increased. So a 3-year span, it increased over 40% from, for me, $95 to $135, 40 against a 95 start. So in a 3-year span, an increase of 40% is a whole lot of giddy up. And I think the basic message is, no matter who your reference boards are about legal rates, somebody needs to do significant work. I know that you presented the funding charts for, say, this library versus the other, most of the other counties. And I'm acquainted with Ashland, having been there for a while. Wonderful library, a whole lot larger rate. But the rate of the speed of increase is phenomenal. No matter what the law is, you need to look at that. So I share the point of view with the lady in the pink sweater that spoke, that that sensitivity to where the money comes from and to the cumulative effect of the whole tax package for people needs to be looked at.
Thank you.
I'd like to speak. Shannon Denniston. I'd just like to make a couple of clarifications. I'm not a lawyer, but the two cases in Northern Kentucky pretty much made it clear and ambiguous was the word used, that the library board is not is not governed by the compensating tax rate. You're governed by 173.790, and that says that the only way you can adjust your rate up or down is through the manner in which we, the people, created you under. And that rate is 3 cents per hundred for all 4 classes of our property. So we're going to ask that, you know, the rate not just be set at 6 this next time, but go back down to where it's supposed to be, which is the lawful rate at 3 cents per hundred for each of the 4 classes of property. We've given numerous opportunities for the board to do what's legal and what's moral. And at this point, I'm just feeling that our best interests are not being looked out for. You know, I mean, it's just, I feel that, you know, 2 years ago I came to the board in good faith that that this would be looked into and that the problem would be fixed. And I was, for the most part, laughed at and ignored. And that's where this all started, was when I brought it to your attention that the rates increases were far greater than 4%. They were double-digit growth, and not just in 1 year by happen chance, but every year, it seems. So, you know, I don't know what else we can do as a group, but at this point, file litigation in the form of a class action lawsuit against the Montgomery County Library Board of Trustees. Hopefully, you know, it won't come to that. Hopefully, we won't have to do that. But we've made I think our argument very clear that we want to see the library's rate at 3 cents per hundred, not 3%, but 3 cents per hundred for each of the 4 classes of property. Thank you.
I guess I need clarification from your group. Why would you do that before it's precedent? Why would you waste more taxpayer dollars with us going hire an attorney without a precedent set? I
You
don't
need a
think it's a good
precedent
precedent.
when there's a law. Go ahead.
Well, it's not a law just because 2 judges say that.
It's
I mean, it's a ruling.
Well,
It's
it's
a
2 judges in the summary judgment, yes, you're right. But at the same token, given the option of a summary judgment twice with identical rulings in the same theater, might I ask, why don't you use the reserve money you have right now and put yours at 3 pennies, which would show us that, okay.
Well, what's the hurry? I'm just asking them. I mean, I think it's
The
a legit
budget,
question.
the budget has to be due, we're told by May 1st, is that
Yeah.
correct? It has to be submitted.
The whole reason for this speed up that just accelerated was we didn't get any traction on 173,790 when we presented it multiple times to the board, and I can understand why, because
Our
you guys
attorney
being.
addressed that though at the
He
last.
said it didn't
But
apply is what he told
But
us.
he addressed it incorrectly, and I understand that, he was also the guy that lost the 2
Yeah.
judgments, so forget about all that. The thing is we were trying to, in all honesty, try to avoid any kind of expense on your part or our part that doesn't serve anybody in this county,
Mhm.
which is what litigation would do. But at the same time, we feel like that law, which is real crystal clear, there's no fog to it at all, that law has now been proven twice before in summary judgment. So does it hurt the board to drop to 3 pennies per hundred and use their reserve to supplant whatever you need to do to run your 6 pennies per hundred during that interim, if you feel that it'll be overturned? We don't really believe it'll be overturned.
Of course it hurts us. That reserve is there for a purpose.
I know, but
And until there's a precedent of law, we're gonna stand firm on that. I mean, I don't know what else you wanna say.
Well, that reserve is not only there for that building, and I know that's what you all think, have in mind, is just for that building. That reserve is also there if a furnace blows up. If a furnace is gone, if an air conditioner is gone, if a bookmobile breaks down, there are things here that cost way more than it's budgeted for.
I understand.
We need reserves to
And
take care
you
of
gotta
that.
use that on your furnace last year or something.
Yes,
And
and we've had
one of
to
the
use that,
issues
but,
there.
you know, the roof leaks right now in the back room.
I guess what we're not saying
Fix
is,
it.
we're not saying,
We can't afford to fix it.
we're not
We
saying
use some of the
use.
reserve money to fix it.
we're
Well,
not
that's
necess-
what I'm saying, if we use the reserve money, it can't be there for 2 things. We can't use it to pay our employees and keep Camargo open, keep the bookmobile going, and do children's program, and fix the roof.
what we're-
Why not?
we're
It will come down to one or the other. We can't do both with it. You can only spend money one time.
Yes, but what we're not saying is, we're not saying that you should go ahead and have a $1.4 million budget. We're saying, put your budget together, which makes sense, and use some of that money. I don't believe that you could buy enough furnaces, air conditioners, or roofs to spend $1 million in reserve, no matter what you did. So what we're saying is, being open and communicating, we believe that the right thing for the library board to do, and it was no fault of yours other than maybe somewhat blind to the double-digit increase that they saw, because you were told, here's your numbers, what do you wanna do? So you had things that you had to get involved in, so we're not arguing that. It's the fact that now that we see what we see, and hopefully everybody's read the summary judgments, and if you haven't, I suggest you do read them, and now that you see that, we think the prudent thing to do, given the fact there's only 15 days before submission, is to put in a budget, put in your rates at 3 pennies, and use some of, not all of it, some of that money to bridge that gap, because we really believe by the end of the year, you'll be at 3 pennies another, 100. And believe you me, you have every right, as does every citizen, if they believe that 3 pennies per 100 probably should have been increased somewhere, anybody can start a petition to get 51% of the votes to make the rate whatever they want, and then it's made, and there's no argument. So we're not arguing your rate, we're arguing the way in which the rate was stated, and what legal precedent they used to create that rate. And so what we're saying is, we feel strongly that we need to back down. We feel like if we don't back down, then we have no option. So what we're doing from this day forth, in our opinion, in our perception, is we're not following the law from this day forth. If we make it any other thing other than 3 pennies per 100. That's the way we feel.
I don't understand the urgency here. The rate can't be changed until August. We can't change the rate until August. It's not set until then. And we can amend our budget at any time. So if this is what we've told the legal rate is, and these other cases are going to be appealed, why would we go on and do it now when we can't do it anyway?
Well, then the only option is for us to do is to accelerate it by class action suit.
Well, we still couldn't change the rate until August.
Yes, you can. The judge can forcibly change it. It was changed in the other 2 counties. It's immediate.
Well,
So I'm not
They're having to refund the money. We're trying to prevent a refund of the money in reserve.
Look, I want the
Wait a
money.
sec, I will let you all let this thing get out of control. It's supposed to be a public forum, not a debate.
Okay. Well,
And that's the guidelines. You've already had 3 minutes. I think it's already done. I'll let you actually do about 7, because I miscounted on the first one.
I think this is good time. I think it's good that we have communication and, because.
I don't call litigation communication.
well, we don't call it
That's
that
a
either.
discrepancy
We're not in
between our
litigation.
groups. But thank you all, for, we really do. We're not mad at you all. We don't think any ill will. It's just,
We want
appreciate you coming in.
every dime that's been collected in real and personal property to be used for Montgomery County, period. We don't want it to be used in any other person's pocketbook. That's all we're asking.
Appreciate that. So that will conclude, unless there's anybody else that hasn't spoken yet. I think that the man on the left, I think we got 2 people on the left that haven't spoken.
Can I ask you a question about the property, or are we gonna be discussing?
You've already used your 3 minutes,
All right.
man, sorry.
All right, no problem.
Oh, wait, he didn't use his.
Yeah, that's right, you didn't.
Daryl Mandrell. A question on the property then. So to set the budget, the rate of the budget, and to go ahead and proceed with the purchase of the property, even though the budget could be amended later on, is after that point then, is it no turning back then? After the purchase has been agreed on, and if you go ahead and with the, set up your budget in the way to reflect going ahead with the plans to purchase the property and all of the other, set in motion all the other things that are associated with fixing up the property. There's no turning back then, right? I mean, that decision has been made and you've basically gotta go forward with that, right? And
We can answer that.
I mean, my point is there any way to table that until more involvement, more information, more community involvement is, an input is put in instead of a rushing to making the decision, let's move forward on this, and then be, that's a question or concern, you know, that I have, it's just as far as the building and the budget and how it's concerned with that.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, things haven't changed since the last time we were here.
No, and as far as the budget, it's been in the budget, funds to purchase that property and funds for an architect, probably for 2 budget years, at least 1 and maybe 2 budget years. Because we knew something was coming up.
Right.
So it's, you know, not an all of a sudden last minute thing, you know, that's been in the budget, been on the table, and there has been, you know, some extra funding in for, you know, and Shannon even noticed that there's been extra things in for our technology guy, extra money for extra hours, extra things. And if we didn't use them, you know, saying there's no turning back, if we didn't use them, they just got applied here, or for extra work at Camargo, or wherever, or if it ended up being where we budgeted extra for utilities or whatever, you know, and it took longer at Camargo to open than we originally anticipated, that money just went back into the general fund.
And my point is, I'm certainly not interested in anybody outside of you all micromanaging the budget. I mean, that's why you all are in the position that you're in. But if a purchase went forward and everything went forward, even though that was set aside, then operating expenses, of course, going forward from that point would be considerably larger, I would think, than they are now. So then that would create a budget shortfall perhaps, and then while this is still continuing maybe to go on without really ever maybe being addressed in the way that appears that it needs to be addressed. That's one of my main concerns.
Appreciate it. Is that it? All right, we'll draw this April meeting, the introductions and the guest speakers to a close.